Now that the election is almost over, we need to remember how insane the campaign was. From Biden dropping out, to being forced, I should say, to the assassination attempt against Trump, to Kamala's just brainless support for abortion. But no matter who wins, will the nation recover? That's what we're going to talk about today on Crisis Point. Hello, I'm Eric Sanders, your host, editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine. Before we get started, I want you to smash that like button like I hope Trump smashes Kamala tonight. I also want you to subscribe to our newsletter, email newsletter. That's the best way to find out about what we're doing. Just go to crisismagazine.com, put in your email address, and we will send you news articles every day, usually 2 articles a day. And also you can follow us on social media at Crisis Mag. Okay, so today's election day, November 5th, 2024. And I wanted to, of course, talk about the election. I think that's what a lot of people are thinking about here in America, at least, and probably around the world. I think it's important before we just, kind of put it in the memory hole and forget about it. I think it is important to review briefly, at least, before we kind of talk more about the what we think the election results are going to be and things like that. I think it's important just to talk about how crazy this campaign has been. And there's so many things I could bring up. I mean, it would just be too many to bring up at this point. But I want to kind of review some of the highlights. The first one is just this happened before all the true craziness happened, which was the legal attempts to basically get rid of Trump, which had been going on for a few years, but then really culminated in 2024 and then in June when there was the felony convictions against Trump. And that is, if you follow this podcast regularly, you'll know that's the moment I finally was like, okay, I'm voting for Trump. I'm supporting him. That's when I first put on my MAGA hat and during the podcast, because I just felt like, okay, for all of Trump's flaws, it's clear that the elites, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, they're out to get him. And the fact that they're going to abuse the legal system to try to get a former president of the United States and the current front runner at the time, and still today, for the next president of the United States, to try to get him out of the race simply by some trumped up charges, excuse the pun. I mean, what's amazing to me about the whole conviction nonsense is what a joke it was in the end. It was basically, let's make up some new laws and try to figure out a way to make it pin on him, which kind of shows Trump doesn't have a lot of baggage, believe it or not, at least legally speaking. Because trust me, if he had actually colluded with Russia, or if he had done some terrible thing in his real estate deals or whatever, that would have come out, because they did. I mean, nobody has been searched for, whose background has been more searched than Donald Trump. And so that was a big moment for me. And I think for a lot of people. But of course, that was like nothing. I mean, we've forgotten about that because most of that stuff has just been pushed aside now. Because obviously, if he wins, that's all going to get thrown out. If he loses, they'll probably still try out of spite, try to put him in jail. But we'll see. Then, of course, what really defined this election, this campaign, I should say, was the Biden-Trump debate that happened back in June. Because remember, at the beginning of this year, even 6 months ago, we thought the campaign was going to be Trump-Biden. And even though most of us could tell, anybody who was paying attention, that Biden was no longer capable of anything, much less running the country, it was proved to everybody at that debate. And of course, even after the debate, a lot of Democrats were still saying, oh, he's sharp as a tack. He's perfectly capable of doing whatever. And Biden was saying, there's no way I'm not going to run. I am running. I am not dropping out. That's just what's going to happen. And so, but that debate really showed that the country is not run by one person. Now, of course, we know it's always true. There's not one person in charge, or at least the person we think who is in charge, we believe is in charge, isn't actually in charge. Because that made it very clear. There's no way that person, Joe Biden, can be running our country right now. No way he can be commander-in-chief, president of the United States in practice. And then, of course, that led to eventually him dropping out. And his dropping out was just so weird, because he was basically his whole campaign, they're all saying, I'm in it, I'm in it. And then all of a sudden a tweet that just says, okay, never mind, I'm out. And then like later a tweet that says, okay, I'm endorsing Kamala. The whole thing was just bizarre. And he didn't address the nation about it until I think it was a Sunday that the tweet went out. Then on Wednesday, that's when he finally addressed the nation about it, that was bizarre as well. And so there's just all these different things that occurred surrounding that showed again, Joe Biden is not in charge, not only of the country, but not even in charge of himself, not in charge of his campaign or anything. And so he was ousted. I mean, there's no question this was a coup, a bloodless coup, but a coup nonetheless. I think a few things Biden has done since then has shown how annoyed he is, how angry he is that they did this to him. I guess in his more lucid moments, he realizes that. And so the fact that he was basically the president of the United States, the supposedly most powerful man in the entire world, was removed by a tweet. I mean, that's essentially what happened. Somebody in his campaign, somebody in his staff wrote a tweet that said, okay, I'm out. And that was it. He was out. I mean, that is not right. That is not normal. That is not the way things should be. But that is the way they are this year. And then you go to Kamala being appointed as the opponent of Donald Trump as a nominee for the Democratic Party. She's never won a single primary vote in her life. She ran in 2020 and was so bad that she didn't even make it to Iowa. That's how bad she was. And she had a lot of support. Hollywood, California, she had money rolling in. But she didn't even make it to Iowa. She was so bad. Tulsi basically ended her campaign. And so, but she becomes the Democratic nominee for president with no vote whatsoever. I mean, technically, I guess they voted at the convention, but at that point, it was already decided. And so that, again, that's something else that's just crazy. That's something that we just have to look at and say, what the heck are we thinking? That we have a situation where the president of the United States, who apparently wants to run for president re-election, is just told, no, you can't, by somebody. And then we have a woman who nobody voted for, is just appointed as the Democratic nominee, all in the name of democracy. And everybody's like, okay. And then that's memory hold. Like the media doesn't look into that at all. Nobody says, okay, what was the story behind here? What's really going on? No claims of like, this is awful by the mainstream media, that this is not democracy, that there's no real transparency going on here. It just happens. And then like, okay, I've left the best for last as far as the craziness of this election campaign. And that, of course, is the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, particularly the one in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, 2024, where, I mean, I don't see how you can look at what happened that day and not think, okay, yes, there was mass incompetence, but somebody knew something. Somebody knew something that beyond just the guy who made the assassination. I can't remember his name now, but somebody was aware that something was going down. And I think it just couldn't have happened otherwise. And you have, of course, the image of Donald Trump actually being shot on live television in the ear, blood coming down. And then that defiant gesture of him getting up and putting up his fist and saying, fight, fight, fight. I do think, I don't know how many other people thought this, but it did change my opinion of Donald Trump. I admit it. In 2016, I thought he was just a despicable, narcissistic person, just not somebody I wanted to be our leader. And I still think, he has some major personality flaws. I mean, anybody who runs for president of the United States is a narcissist. I mean, there's just no other way you can put it. If you run for president of the United States, you think you are God's gift to creation in the current environment. I mean, with Ron Paul being the one exception. But the fact is that this man was shot on live television, and his first instinct was to get up and say, fight, fight, fight. And encourage. I mean, his first thought was, okay, I got to make sure everybody here knows I'm okay. and that we're not caving in. I mean, that's instinct. That is not something that you can, I mean, he's not a military person who is trained for battle. So that's 100% instinct. There's no other way to put it. And that tells us something about him, that he's not in this as a vanity project. That's what I kind of suspected back in 2016. In 2020, when I voted for him, I still was kind of like, maybe it is. And we decided to run again after he had lost in 2020. I was kind of like, is this just his vanity that he just cannot be out of the limelight? He cannot think of anything but put himself forward as, the best option for America. But after that moment when he got shot, I honestly did think like, okay, this isn't vanity. Vanity does not get up in that situation. Vanity is not what powers somebody to get up after they've been shot and yell, fight, fight, fight. That is somebody who actually wants to fight. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And while he still has the personality flaws and stuff like that and all those things, the fact is he clearly is in this for what he thinks is for the best for the country. By the way, when I say his flaws, I mean that about everybody. I mean, we all have, even when we do good acts, often we do them with some bad motives at times, like for vanity or for pride or whatever. I'm not saying he's not a very proud man. But what I'm saying is that in his desire to run the country, there is a sincere part of him that's like, I really do think I can make this country better, and I'm the best person for it. I just think that was proven with his assassination attempt. I also think something very interesting. So that's a lot of the craziness of the campaign, but I also think something very interesting has occurred over the past few years. And I think a lot of people aren't picking up on this. They're not really recognizing this. And that is the great political realignment that has occurred in America over the past few years that I think is primarily caused by COVID. I don't think it's the proximate cause. There's other causes as well, but I think COVID really is the primary one. And there's a great irony here, of course. The irony is that the person who's leading this political realignment was actually very bad on COVID. I mean, I don't get Trump apologists who try to excuse what he did during COVID. He was bad. I mean, let's just be honest. He was bad on COVID. Period. End of story. And yet, he doesn't apologize for it. He never says like I was bad on COVID or anything like that. That's just not his way. And yet, the reality is that the group that he's surrounded himself by, this new political entity he's kind of creating, it consists of a lot of people who are very good on COVID and would be very good going forward on COVID or something like COVID. All the things that were the worst about COVID, the totalitarianism, the attacks on liberty, things of that nature, Trump has surrounded himself by people who are very good at those things. I mean, the main figures are RFK Jr., obviously Vance, Tucker, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon, Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, these are people who now are some of the clearest voices against kind of the woke totalitarian left. They are against the elites. I mean, I'm not saying they're not elites themselves, but they're against like kind of the elite control of things. And I think we need to understand what a radical change this is. I mean, think about it. Of all those people that are surrounded, that Trump surrounds himself by, the figures I just named, none of them supported Trump 5 years ago, except for maybe Tucker. I mean, RFK sure didn't. Tulsi didn't. Ramaswamy wasn't a fan. Vance was against him. Elon wasn't a fan. I mean, all these guys now, though, they're all on Team Trump. And I think that tells us something. I do remember as an aside, I remember like just about a year ago, one of the leftist talking points was that, Trump has not grown his base any. Like basically there's like a 40% of people who are just going to vote for him no matter what, but that's it. He hasn't grown it. Well, that's clearly no longer true because look at how much he's grown it with all these people coming on board the Trump team in the past year. I mean, Vance was hating on him years ago. RFK was actually literally running against him just 6 months ago. Tulsi was a Democrat just a few years ago and was opposed to Trump. And so, like, just the idea that now he's surrounding themselves by these people, this is a political realignment. Now, will it last? I don't know. I do think, though, it especially if Trump wins, I think it will definitely last. And I think it's something we have to get our heads around. I think it goes beyond kind of the standard left, right, blue, red division we've had before. Because what we're seeing is people who are liberal in a lot of things, like an RFK or a Tulsi, they're like, no, we're against, though, like dudes in girls' bathrooms and stuff like that. And we're against what the left, how it's trying to control everything. We're against that. We're against a lot of government power now. And so I really think that this new coalition that Trump has brought together is very much the people against the elites. And again, I see the irony here. Trump is not the people in his own life, in the sense of, like, he's a limousine liberal, is what New York liberal is what he has been in the past. But that doesn't mean. But the truth is, and we've seen this in this campaign so well, he actually connects with real people. You see it in the long form interviews, the podcast that he's done, the long form interviews, the golf trip he took with Bryson DeChambeau, things like that. Talking to Joe Rogan and all those things. You really see, and you see all these clips of him out there. He really does identify with regular people. That's his genius, that he can be a rich New York, real estate mogul, and yet somehow he connects way better with the common man than just about anybody else, and sincerely connects with them. I do think there's some problematic aspects of this new coalition. The one thing it has done is it has definitely diminish the importance of many social issues that we care about. We being, like, people normally in crisis, IVF, abortion, homosexual marriage, things like that. That's clearly been put on the back burner and kind of accepted, like that's just the reality. Now, they are decent on the transgender issue. They're not great on it, but at least they understand that they understand that the people are against dudes in girls' bathrooms. So I think it's a matter of, I do think there's cause for concern for social conservatives, because clearly we are no longer the driving force behind this coalition. But the reality is, who this new coalition's fighting hates us with a passion. I mean, ultimately, when it comes down to it, I like Trump. I like RFK. I like Elon. I like those guys. You know why? I like Tulsi. You know why? Not because I'm 100% aligned with them politically, but because they don't hate me. And I know Kamala Harris hates me if she knew who I was. I know that Tim Walz hates me. I know the Democratic elites hate me. I know the Republican elites, the Mitch McConnells, they hate me. That's the other thing. This is not a strict Republican Democrat thing. Again, like, Mitch McConnell is the enemy. Tulsi Gabbard is a friend. I mean, that's where we are now. If you are a conservative Catholic, I think that's how you have to look at it, or a libertarian Catholic. You have to look at it like that. Like, Tulsi Gabbard, somebody like her, is our friend, even though she's wrong on some very important issues to us. And Mitch McConnell, who technically is right on some of these issues, like Mitch McConnell is pro-life, Tulsi Gabbard is pro-choice. That should be the driving force for us. And historically, for the past few decades, it has been. But I don't think it's true this year. And I know this is kind of a radical statement, and I know some pro-lifers will not like it. But I just think it's the reality where we are, that Mitch McConnell will go along with the elites to destroy our way of life. Tulsi Gabbard at least will be a little bit like, no. I just use her as the example because she's probably the most liberal of those people I mentioned. RFK, you could use him as well. RFK is our friend. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. I know he's terrible on abortion. I know he's terrible on Israel. I know he's terrible on certain government regulations he wants and government role and things. I know all that, but he doesn't hate me. He's going to allow me to practice my faith. He's going to allow me to at least make an effort to bring back a pro-life worldview to our country. Kamala and her gang will crush us as much as she can. So I think this is important for us as Catholics. Remember, I know a lot of Catholics, like I have voted third party many times in the past. I know all the arguments, but I decide not to this time and actually be more enthusiastic in my support for Trump simply because I recognize this new coalition. And there's only two coalitions going on right now, the Trump coalition and the elites. That's the only two groups. I understand there's third parties, but they have no significance this year. I mean, RFK did, but then he joined the Trump coalition. And I think that tells us something. So I really think that COVID changed our country fundamentally in so many ways. And one of the ways it did is it realigned the political calculus. It realigned who our allies are in some ways and who they're not. I mean, 5 years ago, I would never have said RFK is our ally. But now it's like, yeah, no, he is definitely our ally. Elon Musk, Elon Musk got some weird ideas. No question about it. I don't want him putting his chip in my brain. But that doesn't mean he isn't my ally, because he understands. I mean, X has been under him, has really helped the cause of Catholics. So I do think that's important. I just want to bring up a comment. I like this one. Cove Bear says, maybe it isn't a concern. Could the lack of social stances be a push towards subsidiarity in moral issues? I think that's a good point. I do think that's what's happening. That, for example, with Roe v. Wade being overturned, abortion has been thrown back to the states, and we see some states have very good pro-life laws, and some states have terrible ones. And a state like mine, Ohio, which you would hope would have not been bad on abortion, has a terrible law has been put into effect after Roe v. Wade. And so, but I think though it gets to the point, I think what he's saying there about a push towards subsidiary and moral issues. Yes, I know that we should be like something like abortion should be illegal in the entire country. I get that. But I've been alive long enough to know that Republicans have run on overturning Roe v. Wade forever, and they didn't really mean to do it. They actually didn't want it overturned, because then all of a sudden they'd have to stand up and be like, oh, I'm going to actually have to vote on something that could make abortion illegal. They knew they never had to do that as long as Roe v. Wade was intact. But now with Dobbs, it does matter again. Like they might have to stand up, and we're seeing the reality is that our country is not pro-life. The majority of our country, a vast majority, I would say, do not agree with Catholics like us who think abortion should be illegal all 9 months. That's just a reality. I think most Americans would be for an abortion ban after maybe 15, 20 weeks, something like that. The problem, though, is whenever it's actually put on the ballot, something like that even loses, because the left does such a good job of basically saying that, basically saying you have to rape teenagers who are raped are going to have are not going to have abortions or whatever, something like that. And so people are like, oh, okay, I'll vote for it. But the point is that this new coalition, Trump's coalition, if he wins and if it stays intact on some level, it is a new way of looking at things. And I think as pro-life Catholics, we need to realize that and work much more at the local level than we have in the past. I think Kamala is going to try and make it so we can't do that. Another comment here on the live chat. Just hopefully you're on the live chat. Roger Rathbun says, I voted straight Republican for the first time in my life. And I get that. It's not just, that's the funny thing about this election. People who were much more likely to vote third party. I voted for a lot more Republicans than I ever have. I don't vote for Democrats usually, but like when I was going through, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm voting for Republicans straight through. The funny part is that here in Ohio, we have a Senate race. Sherrod Brown versus Bernie Moreno. And I didn't know much. I hadn't followed much about this, and I was going to look into it. There's also a libertarian candidate, and I still vote with third party sometimes, so I was going to look into it. But then every single time I opened up a YouTube video, I got an ad attacking Bernie Moreno for being, anti-abortion with no exceptions. He was against abortion all 9 months. I'm like, okay, you got my vote. I mean, it was a Sherrod Brown commercial, but it was basically, saying how Bernie Moreno is against abortion. So I'm like, okay, great. So I voted for Bernie Moreno. And I thought he didn't have a chance because Sherrod Brown's been around forever. But I just saw polls this morning that show Bernie Moreno might have a chance. So we'll see. Okay, so Here, let me get another comment here before I go on. My friend, female KC Royals fan from Nebraska. I say my friend because she often comments, and I appreciate that. After I got my paper ballot, I filled in what I was going to vote for or against, and I skipped the president line and then went back to it and I voted against communism, basically. Yeah, God bless you. I mean, God bless you. I mean, a lot of people vote for Trump because they really believe in Trump. A lot of people vote for Trump because they realize how dangerous a Kamala Harris presidency would be. Okay, and here one more comment before I go on right now. Corriere Su Press. I just bought something from you. If you're who I think I am, I just bought a book from Peter by St. Peter Alcantara from you. So thank you. If that's you, thank you. What is the Catholic take on the Catholicity of Catholically third-party options like Peter Sonsky's Solidarity Party? Well, I interviewed Peter Sonsky on the podcast about a month ago, and I respect Peter greatly. I really do. I think he's a legitimate, true Catholic. He's a true Catholic option. I think he's running for president for all the right reasons. He wants to really bring out issues that are important to faithful Catholics like us to the forefront. So I have no problem with him running for president. I personally could not vote for him. I don't think Ohio really is a swing state, but I wasn't willing to risk it. If I was in a true blue state, like a New York or a California, I might have voted for Sonsky. I think there's a decent chance I would have. But any state where there's even a slight chance that Trump might not win, I just felt like, no, I can't do that this year. I just can't do it. So, but yeah, I'd encourage you to go back and look at our interview with Peter. It was very good. He did a great job. So, oh yeah, okay. He just commented, yes, that's us. Well, thank you for what you're doing. Corriere Su Press. I encourage people to go Corriere Su Press. They have some good books there, and I just bought one from him. So, from them, I don't know exactly who runs it, but anyway. Okay, so now I want to look at. I've talked about this coalition. I want to look at the polls. Who do we think? Who are they saying going to win? I noticed that Nate Silver, who was the Cat's Meow like 10 years ago predictors, but he was wrong on 2016, so maybe not as much. He said that they ran 80,000 simulations of the election, and in 40,021 of them, Harris won. So, I mean, this is about as neck as you can get, according to his polls of who won. Now, that kind of, though, goes against a lot of other things. Like in the betting markets, this is something I think people are just getting used to. I've seen it in the crypto world for a long time, but in the betting markets, which basically means you can bet on things like the presidential election. Now, there's only one that's legal in America. So some of these betting markets are people from outside the country. So what do they know? But you basically put money down who you think is going to win, not who you're going to vote for, who you want to win, but who you think is going to win. And people are putting real money, like tens of thousands of dollars per bet in some cases. And there's millions of dollars being bet on this. And what they found is these prediction markets, these betting markets actually do a pretty good job because people like bet on what they really think is going to happen. So if I'm betting, if I really think Kamala is going to win, I'm betting for that. I'm not betting on Trump. I might vote for Trump. I might tell everybody Trump's going to win. And I want him to win, but I'm not putting money down on that if I don't believe in it. And that I'm going to base this on all this. And like, it's basically the mass is kind of saying, okay, who do we, when we're talking to our friends and all that stuff, who are we going to vote for? Who is actually going to be voted for? So they're saying these betting markets about 60% Trump. So it's 60-40 Trump. That doesn't mean that they think 60% of the vote's going to go to Trump. What it's saying is 60% of the people are voting for, are predicting Trump is going to win. That's a pretty sizable margin. So most people who are putting money down are really thinking Trump's going to win. I think we're going to find out if to predict these betting markets how good they are after the election results come out. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Depends on if we believe the election results. I'll get to that in a minute. So that's one thing. Then the last thing I want to show is I'll put this up on the screen. What really matters, let's be honest. This election comes down to the voters in about 7 states. And that's it. And so how are people doing? And this is from real clear polling. And they're showing like kind of the result, what the polling was on the final day of the voting, of the election campaign in 2016, 2020, 2024. And what we see is like in 2020, Biden really was ahead in most of these states. But look at 2024. National, don't worry about it. Harris is up by 0.4 in Wisconsin. She's also up in Michigan by 0.5. That's it on all the battleground states. Ohio and Florida, I don't know why they're listed because Trump's up by so much in those states. Georgia, he's up by 1.3. North Carolina, 1.2. Arizona, 2.8. I mean, he's up in Pennsylvania barely. He's up in Nevada barely. But the point is that he's got, if these polls are correct, he's got the electoral college, which is all that matters. Let's remember that. All he needs is, he doesn't need the popular vote. Who cares if Harris wins the popular vote? Doesn't matter how many people are going to vote for Harris in New York City or Los Angeles or Portland, Oregon. What matters is the electoral college. And so the polls look very good. I mean, there's no question that the polls do look good for Trump compared to previous years. Now, the one thing in particular in the past is that Trump always polled worse than reality because people were afraid to admit they voted for Trump. Like they might vote for Trump, but then after they walk out of the booth, they're like, no, I'm not going to tell you, or I might even lie about who I voted for. I don't know how much that's true anymore. I've noticed that a lot of people are more vocal in their support of Trump than they were in the past, like me, for example, but just people that like you wouldn't think. I mean, Mike Tyson the other day was saying, I'm voting for Trump. I think people were afraid a lot more of saying they're voting for Trump in the past, but they're so tired of the shutting everybody down who votes for Trump that they finally say, no, I'm going to stand up. I think him getting shot and fighting back, I think that was a big moment. A lot of people are like, if this dude can literally get shot and jump up and say, fight, 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 and like get rid of his Secret Service people out of his way to say, fight, 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 well, then I can at least admit to the public that I'm voting for Trump. I really think that's part of it as well. So, polls, I don't know. They're so hard to gauge, but so yeah, we'll see about that. Another comment real quick. K Barrett says, great points, Eric. We in Southwestern Ohio can't change the minds in Columbus or Cleveland, much less New York City. I think subsidiary is our best chance to limit abortion. Absolutely. I'm convinced of this, that we just have to work on the local level, try to shut down abortion clinics through legal means, locally. Work with your state capital to try to get the abortion laws good in your state where it matters. I mean, obviously do that. I mean, here in Ohio, we have an uphill climb because of the fact that, it's been enshrined in our Constitution. It's going to take a lot to get that overturned. But other states, I think there's 10 states this year that have abortion on the ballots. So pro-lifers, if you got to be voting in those elections for the pro-life vote in all those states, and we continue to put things on the ballot or fight things the pro-aborts put on the ballot. I think those things are important. Okay, so it comes down to this, and what's my prediction? What is my prediction about who is going to win? And this is funny because I'm posting this podcast, live on November 5th. Some people won't see it till November 6th or later, and so it's already going to be dated by then. Oh well, what can I do? I predict Trump's going to win. I do think he's going to win. I think that ultimately, I think he's just got the numbers. I think the ability to rig the election is going to be more difficult this year because of the fact that everybody's aware of it. People are keeping their eyes out for any type of shenanigans. That's my old Gen X word. I think, though, that we need to – I do think Trump is going to win. I think everybody who's going to vote for Trump, get out there and make sure you vote if you haven't yet. But I think he's going to have enough votes that it's going to be too hard for them to overturn it. So I do think Trump's going to win. Now, if he wins, what do I think that means? How do I think his presidency will lay out? I said not a while ago that I guarantee if Trump wins, I'm going to be disappointed in his presidency. But I guarantee if Kamala wins, her presidency is going to be a disaster. I have some serious policy disagreements with Trump. I don't think he's good on Israel, for example. Obviously, he's terrible on IVF. He's not good on abortion. There's other things that I disagree with him on. I think he's going to, not going to keep all his promises. Oh, what a shock. A political candidate doesn't keep all his promises. So there's going to be reason to be disappointed in him. But that being said, I think he's going to be so much better than Kamala. Now, here's the thing, though. I think what he went through his first term as president, like the attacks, the Russiagate, the impeachment stuff, all that crap, I think it's be far worse. The left, the elites are not going to take this lying down. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. Is the things Trump is going to be like, he surrounded himself with very good people, and he's going to be want to be very good on the drain the swamp stuff that he actually knows better now. The getting RFK to do some good stuff in for our nutrition and health and vaccines and all that stuff. Getting maybe Ramaswamy involved as a chief of staff or whatever. Getting Elon Musk involved in cutting government waste, all that stuff. I just think all that stuff is going to be resisted so heavily because it's not just resisted by Democrats. It's resisted by the elites, by the state, by the government class, by Republicans. And I think his chances of success, real lasting success in the area, are very low. I'll be honest. I just think they're very low. I think he'll try, but they're going to do everything they can to undermine him. And remember, we already know assassination attempts are not off the table. They've already tried it once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. There's nothing to say they won't try it again. Now, would Vance be able to be successful? I don't know. My point is, what Trump is going to be fighting against is so powerful that I think it'll be very difficult for him to make real lasting change. I pray and hope he does. I pray and hope he wins, and I pray and hope he does drain the swamp and makes lasting change. I just don't think, boy, it's going to be a nightmare. And the truth is, it's going to be exhausting. Every day there will be, CNN, MSNBC, all the people online, stuff like that, will just be Trump is Hitler, and here's proof every single day of his presidency. I mean, they did that somewhat his first term, but it's going to be at a whole new level. Why? Because they know Trump knows now how hard it is to make the changes. He failed in his first term to really make to drain the swamp. He appointed a bunch of neocons to, policy positions, and he admits it. He says, I didn't realize how bad it was when I got there. He now knows how bad it is. And they know he knows how bad it is. And so I think they're going to fight him a lot more than they did in the past, which is hard to believe considering how much they fought him in the past. So I think that's one thing. I think he'll be, good on some things, bad on other things, but more importantly, he just isn't going to be allowed to do the good things he wants to do. But the funny thing is the elites will let him be bad on Israel, whatever. They might not let him be bad, what they would consider bad on Ukraine, because, he's good on Ukraine. He's good on that. We'll see what happens with that. He's good on, his instincts are always for peace, which that's one of the best things I like about him. But boy, the war hawks in the neocons in the elite class, the Liz Cheneys of the world, they are not going to take that lying down. So I think we need to pray and fast. If he wins, we need to pray and fast for this election. We need to pray and fast if he wins, because it's going to be, it could be really a nightmare. Now, real quick, what if Kamala wins? Here's where I differ from a lot of other conservatives. I don't think it's going to be like the end of the republic as we know it. I think it's going to be a continuation of the frog boiling, so to speak, of our country. Trump was a little bit like they turned down the heat. He turned down the heat a bit on the burner when he was president. But essentially, we've had a slow progression, sometimes a little faster and a little slower, towards a totalitarian state, towards empire, forever wars, towards the terrible social things like abortion, gay marriage, transgenders, and all that stuff. It's been relentless, but it hasn't been overnight. Kamala is just a continuation of Biden, because Biden obviously was not capable of running the country for obvious reasons. Well, neither is Kamala. She's an empty suit. She's just a figurehead. Does anybody on earth, other than maybe her and maybe her husband, think that she's actually going to be running the country? Of course not. So the same people who are running the country for the past 4 years will be running the country again, and probably were helping run the country during 8 Obama years. So yes, it will be bad, a disaster in many ways. But I think calls for all of a sudden, everything overnight just becomes a disaster. I don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. So I think that really ultimately it will be bad, but I don't think overnight, all of a sudden, or even within her term, the country will be that different than it was during the Biden administration, which is bad, and it goes in the bad direction, but it's not the destruction of our country as we know it. And really, another question is about violence after the election. If Trump wins, will there be violence? I think there will be pockets of violence, or mostly peaceful protests, as CNN will call them. I don't think it will like sweep the country, but I do think you'll see areas where there will be riots and acts of violence if Trump wins. If Kamala wins, I don't really see that happening. Maybe there might be a few pockets, but I mean, conservatives, we just don't do that. I mean, typically. So I think we would just take it lying down. So I do think, there is possible. Another comment, give me a few more comments here. Theodore Sieber, who watches the channel often. I appreciate that, Theodore. He said, I voted for Sonsky, but I'm stuck in the culture of death in Oregon, where our dear governor pays for people to come from different countries and states to come and kill their unborn terminally ill. Honestly, a vote for Sonsky in Oregon, I got no problem with that. I understand why you did it. And, yeah. And as Theodore says, Harris can win Oregon 3-1. So, I don't blame you at all. I mean, I think there is a place for registering a protest against the system, because ultimately the system is what's broken. Trump can't fix it. Nobody can. And so just registering a complaint, a vote against the system by voting for Sonsky, I respect that. So in a blue state particularly, or even a very red state. And then you have the celebrity. Oh, another comment for female. You got to get a shorter name here. Female KC Royals fan from Nebraska. I kind of like it because I'm a baseball fan, but you have the celebrities who are endorsing Harris like they've been threatened. I mean, they really do look like hostage videos when you get all the Diddy clients getting up there and saying like, I vote for, we need to support Harris. I mean, it's kind of creepy, these videos they make and at rallies, these celebrities, which they have blackmail on them. That's why they're doing it. Another comment from Palermoros. Catholics obsess over sex while aiding the fundamental destruction of U.S. and Europe through mass third world invasion, aka migration, unforgivable crime. I mean, I don't think we obsess about sex. I think Catholics understand that the way our world is right now, more people go to hell probably because of sexual sins than about anything else, because it's pushed on us. We have pornography everywhere. We have all this pushed on us. So I do think it's important. At the same time, I understand your point that we are being invaded. I mean, we're being invaded by through this opening our borders, and there's no other way to put it. And so we're losing our culture. We're losing so many aspects of what it means to be American. So, I mean, I think that is important. And I think that's one of the reasons why Trump is so popular, because people see that. Trump has said over and over again, the border is the most important issue in his mind. He didn't do enough when he was president, but I'm hoping this time he'll get more done if he wins. Deus Salve America, Donald Trump Presidente 2024. Amen. I think Joshua, I can't pronounce your name, Lopez. Yes. I mean, I'm obviously, as you can tell from my hat, that I voted already. I voted for Donald Trump for president. I hope you do as well. I've been a critic. I also want to mention this before we kind of wrap things up here in a minute. I'm going to continue. If he wins, I'm going to continue to criticize Donald Trump. I know that annoys some Trumpsters. I know that, but I just feel like our duty as Catholics is to the truth, not to a political candidate or party. There's nothing wrong with voting for a certain political candidate who's not ideal. I'm doing it. I did it. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't hold their feet to the fire when they're wrong on something. And Donald Trump is very wrong when it comes to IVF. He's very wrong when it comes to abortion, really. We should hold him to that. We should make sure, we should let him know we're not going to support him when he does those things. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And so I really think that I'm going to continue to criticize him, as long, if he becomes president again. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we can't support him when he does good things or vote for him ultimately, knowing the alternative. And I just want to leave it. One last thing I want to say here, and that is, as Catholics, we need to be at peace. We need to be at peace because ultimately our ruler is not going to be Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Our ruler is Christ the King. Jesus Christ, our King, is our ruler. We need to be at peace because we know God is in control, no matter what happens, no matter who wins, no matter how long it takes, no matter if there's rioting, violence, or whatever. Ultimately, Jesus is Lord. He is King. He is in control. We need to pray and fast for our country. We hopefully have been leading up to the election. We need to be afterwards, whoever gets elected. We need to do that because that's ultimately what we're called to do. Most of us cannot affect world events, geopolitics, anything like that. What we can do is we can pray and fast. We can do penance. That's what we need to do. And I'll just leave it with Psalm 146, verses 3-5. Put not your trust in princes, in a son of man in whom there is no help. When his breath departs, he returns to his earth. On that very day, his plans perish. Happy is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God. Okay, everybody, until next time, God love you.